Alright, we're going to need 4 pieces of the wire that's included, and we're going to be wiring that up to the limit switch as well as the toggle switch. So I was double checking the directions. It actually says 80 millimeters, which is incidentally right around 3.5 inches, a little bit less. So I'm going to go exactly with 80. Just take your calipers and then kind of mark it out. I'm sure it doesn't have to be exact, but that way you know you'll have enough. So I'll just go ahead and cut 4 pieces of that. Yeah, it looks like there's enough for an extra piece if we need it. So, alright, so next up I'm going to go ahead and solder to the switch here, or the limit switch. And kind of a similar process, I'm going to trim a little bit of the wire. And then I'm gonna tin this as well. I'm going to use my helping hands. And then I'm going to be soldering to these 2 tabs, the outside 2 tabs. So first thing I'm going to show is the tinning of the tabs on the switch. You don't want to sit there for very long, maybe like 2 or 3 seconds. Get a little bit of solder on there and you should be good. I'll bring that up to show it. So it's really not a whole lot of solder, just enough for the wire to connect to. After that, I'm going to tin the ends of this. Might as well tin both ends because they're both going to get soldered. Again, you don't need a whole lot on there, you just need to touch it just enough to cover it. Okay, now that I have that done, I'm just going to come in here and solder it to the limit switch. And it's just a quick little touch. And you also may notice I'm dipping my soldering iron into this brass wool here. I prefer that much over a sponge because a sponge can kind of wear down the thermal properties of your tip. I've actually damaged tips using sponges, so I switched to the brass wool a long time ago. Sponges are okay if you're doing light soldering, and you can get a cleaner tip, but you don't really need to do that as long as you're taking care of your iron and properly tinning the tip. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is secure this arm to the motor, and then if you look at the picture, you got to rotate it a little bit and move it down to about here. So that's a proper orientation. So go ahead and do that. Okay, the first thing we're going to install in the box is this limit switch. It's going to drop and set right in here, and then we're simply going to screw in this little flag right over it to hold it down. If you look closely, you can see how it kind of holds in place with the printed part as well. Okay, before you secure the limit switch with a plastic piece, you need to put your servo motor in there and make sure that it can, kind of adjust. It's a little tricky getting that fit. Once you've done that, take your screw and your plastic cover and slide that in carefully, like so, and then just screw it in. And it should hold it firmly in place. Make sure you're not pinching any wires either. And then you can kind of test that it's going to hit that limit switch. Okay, next up is the battery holder, and that is installed on the opposite side of the motor. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is make sure that your wires are going to feed through this little groove here as you're sliding it in. You just want to gently work that in, being careful not to break any of the connections. And the reason you want that to go in the groove is because you don't want it to get caught in the door. It's going to take a little bit of finagling. Okay, now we're going to simply secure the motor here. You notice it's a little floppy. You don't want that, so grab yourself one of your M6x8 screws and just feed it in here, and then use the supplied Allen key. Make sure your wires aren't in the way. Alright, so I got that in. Now you can see the wires are still kind of nicely tucked in here.